There's only so much we can do on our own. When you hire a professional that just gets it and knows more than you when it comes to finances, they can only help you be better. They can only help you understand things more. And it might take time. Invest the money. The only way you're going to get clarity and start to get on top of the numbers is when you have someone there to guide you. All right. I'm Rebecca Hay, and I've built a successful interior design business by trial and error, podcasts, online courses, and so many freaking books. Over the last decade, I've grown from an insecure student to having false starts to careers, and now I'm finally in the place where I want to be. Throughout my journey, it's been pretty obvious that I'm passionate about business and helping other entrepreneurs do the same. Each week, I'll share tangible takeaways from my own experience and the experiences of other badass women to help you build your confidence and change your business. Hey, it's Rebecca, and you are listening to Resilient by Design. I thought it was a good time in the year to hop on the podcast and share with you some insights into managing at a design business with inconsistent cash flow. It's something that I've struggled with early in my career and even to an extent more recently inside the design business because there are such peaks and valleys to our industry. And so I wanted to share with you 7 tips that I have really leaned into that have helped me immensely in really kind of getting a better hold of cash flow, because it can be very challenging and stressful running a business when you don't have the same revenue every single month and you don't know what's coming your way. So hang in there. We're going to deep dive into what you can do right now inside your design business to help you through these peaks and valleys. One of the most challenging parts of running a design firm is the inconsistency with projects, because we get projects throughout the year, and they're all different sizes and scales, especially when you're starting out. You're just happy to take on any project. It comes your way, you dive in. And there are times when it feels like feast or famine. If you can relate, you can relate to this episode, because there's this thing when you start your business, you think, okay, I'm going to be doing design work. You don't really think about, the money side of things. Let's be honest. And that's why I try to do as many money episodes on this podcast and bring in different experts, because I think that it's something that I overlooked, but I think that a lot of design firm owners, whether it's their first or second career, really do overlook, because you jump into it, you're excited to run your business, you're excited to practice your craft and decorate, design, work with trades, have great clients. But there's this thing looming over your head, which is money, cash flow, paying yourself, paying your team, paying for expenses. And so what I experienced in the early years was that fear of not having a consistent paycheck. It's not like working corporate, right? The money doesn't just go into your account from your employer every 2 weeks or every month. And if you have feared not having a consistent paycheck and it's holding you back from starting your business maybe, or even growing your design firm, or maybe you just recognize that this industry can be so boom and bust, you're not alone. And this is the reality of business ownership. And so today I thought it would be useful to walk you through 7 tips that have helped me in my business journey to not necessarily master, I can't claim to have everything figured out, but to significantly improve managing cash flow and managing running a business. So I want to help you prepare and manage your own inconsistent revenue or inconsistent income of running your business. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to dive into these 7 tips. And then at the end, I'm going to share a few stories along the way. Let's be real. I'm going to share some nuggets of experiences I've had. And at the end, I'm going to share with you the one of all these 7 things. If you can only do one, the one that has made the biggest difference in my business and my life. So tip number 1, know how much money you need to live on. How much money do you need to pay yourself? And to be honest, I only did this exercise a couple of years ago. Well, essentially, it's a personal exercise where I went through all the expenses that I pay for and I tallied them all up. And how much do I need to pay myself at a minimum in order to survive, in order to be comfortable, in order to feel safe. You need to know how much money you personally need. That is like your baseline, because anything above that is the money you're going to use in your business and for other things. So what do you need to earn for safety and sustainability? After you've paid everything to do with childcare, your mortgage, your insurances, your car, your clothing, your travel, the inconsistent expenses that pop up, like a vet visit, going to the dentist. I just went to the freaking dentist and I don't have insurance. And I had a cleaning and x-rays and it was like $340. I was like, what the what? Right? You know what I'm talking about. So I need you to spend some time because, listen, you don't have to do any of these things, but this is what I did. And it actually shocked me. Like, it literally blew my mind how much money I needed to bring home every month, because I added it up over the year. And then I kind of, I just sort of balanced it out so that every month was the same amount, because as you know, some months are higher, some months are lower. And I just looked at the previous year and I looked at my utilities. I looked at my mortgage. I looked at my kids' school. I looked at all the things that I spent money on. And then that total, and I divided it by 12. Well, shoot. It totally blew me away. I really had no idea how expensive my life was. And now a lot of that is my choice, and I can easily reduce expenses as needed. But it's a very good exercise just to start with as an eye-opener, because then that tells you that as long as if you're a sole provider or if you're a solopreneur and are a sole proprietor in your business, like, you need to make enough money so that you can live your life and then some. So that is my first tip. You need to figure out how much money you need to live by, because that's going to help inform the money coming in and out. And as I get further down the tips, I'm going to give you some techniques to help you manage that so that you have that consistent revenue even when it's inconsistent. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, I recommend you separate your personal and your business bank accounts. Boom, mic drop. If you're not already doing this, here's why you need to do it. At the beginning, when you start a business, you're running it out of your own personal bank account. I know, I did that for a few years. And so what happens is you look at the bank account, there's a bunch of money in there, you see it as yours, and that's okay, I think, at the very beginning. But then it can kind of get a little challenging because some expenses are business expenses, some expenses are personal expenses, and then come tax time, it can be rather complicated. I recommend that you find a way to create a new bank account. Get a business bank account, whether or not you're incorporated. As a sole proprietor, you can still have a business bank account. Try to run your expenses through that business bank account. Get a business credit card. I still just have one business credit card, and that is all I need. But it is important that you are able to then pay for expenses that are business related on that business credit card or through that business bank account so that you can keep things separate. That's going to really help you so that you don't spend money that's not yours. When a client gives you money to buy product, if you then see it as your money and then you start to go shopping, or you're like, oh, I'm going to go and have a photo shoot and I can pay for $3,500 or I can do that. And then it comes time to pay your vendors and you don't have enough money, you're screwed. So I really recommend you keep them separate personal and business bank accounts. When I finally did that, when I finally created a separate business bank account, it took a little while, to be honest, to get used to it, because there were some things that I was like, oh, well, but this is like, I can write this off. It doesn't matter. It's a business expense. Put it through the business. The sooner you can separate personal and business, the sooner you're going to be operating from a CEO mindset. And once I started to get into the rhythm of it and understood it, it made my life so much easier, because then I could see in this business bank account how much money we had, and I could project and say, okay, here's the projects I have coming, and then what can I take for myself? So before we get to paying yourself, I'm going to first dive into the next tip, which is tip number 3, build an emergency fund. Here is what I mean. An emergency fund, also known as a rainy day fund, is essentially a sum of money that you hold in your bank account for a rainy day, or for a time when you don't have leads, or business slows down, or there's a pandemic, God forbid. This was something that was my goal. and if you know my story, if you've listened to this podcast for a little bit, you will know that for the early years, I was really behind the eight ball. I was spending more than I made. I owed back taxes to the government, and I was just trying to claw my way out of a hole. But once I started to get to that point where I was caught up, it was my goal to have an emergency fund. I had heard somewhere, either was a podcast or in a book, that a 6-month runway was the ideal amount of money to have. What does that mean? A 6-month runway means that you have enough money in your bank account to carry you for 6 months of zero revenue. Now, some people say you only need 3 months. Some people say a year. You can decide what works for you. But my dream was I want 6 months of business expenses in the bank so that my goal was just to always keep that amount. And so I had a really successful couple of years after I finally caught up and sort of broke even. And I brought in a lot of cash into the business. And I finally got to a place where I was like, oh my gosh, this is what they're talking about. This is the peace of mind that makes me not sweat it when I don't know where the next job is coming from. Because I had 6 months of a runway. And sure enough, did I need that money? No sooner did I hit my marker of 6 months than there was a global pandemic and everything was shut down. We didn't lose projects, but everything got put on hold and it slowed right down. But I was able to keep my team employed, working on processes internally, working inside the business, moving things forward in my coaching, doing things that immediately didn't generate revenue, but I knew down the road would help. And so did I blow through that 6 months? Yep, you'll bet I sure freaking did. And am I still working to build that back up? Yes, sirree. But frick, was I happy that I had that. Now, my story is a bit extreme. Like a pandemic is not a common peak and valley in our industry. That's like a once in a lifetime phenomenon. But imagine that I had that 6-month runway and all it was a couple of months of slowness in the summer or maybe over Christmas. Like it would not even faze me because I would have that emergency fund. Now, of course, you still need to understand and be tight on your expenses and make sure you're not spending where you shouldn't. But if you can build up a type of emergency fund, and what I did is I opened a savings account connected to my business checking, and I slowly started to move money to the savings account because by pure nature of being in a different bank account, I was less likely to spend it. And yeah, there were times I would need to dip into it and back. And sometimes I would say, you know what, I want to use this for business development or I want to invest in hiring somebody. But sure as heck was amazing to have that because I was one of the few business owners that was not sweating it when everything grounded to a halt in the pandemic. Tip number 4 is pay yourself regularly. This is going to help you not feel the panic. So sometimes what happens as a business owner, as a solo proprietor, this was me, is we transfer money to ourselves as we need it. So great, we've separated our bank account, we've got a personal account, we've got a business account, we're feeling really good. But then we're like, oh shoot, I've got to pay for the kids' field trip and my bank account's getting low. I'm just going to transfer $500. Or oh, I really want to go on that trip to Puerto Rico. I'm just going to transfer myself $5,000. And so, yes, legally, you can do that. They're called shareholder distributions or dividends. And I'm not going to get into the technical terminology because I'll screw it up. But you're essentially paying yourself early before the end of the year. It's like an advance bonus. And a lot of business owners do this. And I still, from time to time, will transfer myself money and it's just added up at the end of the year and taxed as a bonus. But the problem with that is twofold. One, oftentimes people do not pay themselves enough because they only take as they feel like it's absolutely necessary. So they're underpaying themselves and they don't have any disposable income. Or two, they're drawing large lump sums and they're, for lack of a better term, bankrupting their own business. Like they're actually hurting their business. So what I recommend you do is you set up an auto transfer to auto transfer the funds to yourself if you're not on payroll, or put yourself on a payroll that will make sure you're covering what I talked about in tip number 1, which is the monthly amount that you need to live by. So you know that you're covered. I did this about 2 years ago where I put myself on payroll, against an accountant's advice because he's like, oh, you're paying double tax. I said, I don't care. I need peace of mind and consistency. I need to know that I don't have to remember to transfer money to myself and then my bank goes in overdraft. I don't know if you've been there, but I've been there many times because I don't check my bank accounts as frequently as maybe I should. And so by setting up an auto transfer every month or set yourself up on payroll, holy heck, game changer. Like, oh my God, it's almost like having a normal job. Now, obviously, you want to make sure you have enough money in your bank account so you don't overdraw and then you can't pay your bills. But that's going to come back to really understanding how much it costs for you to live your life. And then you need to make sure that if you pay yourself, let's say, $50,000 a year to carry all your expenses, then you need to ensure you're bringing in more than $50,000 a year in design projects or in whatever it is your business model does. So I say auto transfer funds to yourself if you're not on payroll, or put yourself on a regular payroll. And what I've done, and this is something I would suggest to anyone who's just starting out at this payroll business, is pay yourself the minimum you need to cover your monthly expenses. So like your enough point, like it's just enough to live by, but nothing extra. That way you're keeping the rest of the money in the business. And for tax purposes, that's usually useful because then that money is only taxed on the corporate amount, which is lower than personal tax rate. But it's there. And if you need extra money, you can always transfer yourself as a bonus. Tip number 5. You need to nurture past clients. This is something that I still don't think I'm very good at, but the times it's been successful, I'm like, oh, I get it. And what I mean by that is you need to pay attention to the clients that you love, obviously not the a-holes that were shitty and took you for all your money or whatever, but the clients that you've worked with, that you had a good rapport with, that you did a great project. And I'm not saying you're nurturing them because you want repeat business. If that comes, that's a bonus. But I would nurture them to stay top of mind to them so they can refer you. It is the easiest way to get more design work without investing in marketing. Let me say that again. The easiest way to continue bringing in design clients is through past design clients without even having to spend $1 on marketing or even do a single Instagram story. How do you do this? You send them a birthday card on their birthday. You send them a gift at a certain holiday if you know that they celebrate Rosh Hashanah or Passover, or maybe they celebrate Easter, whatever it might be. You get them on a monthly newsletter. Oh my gosh, this is so freaking powerful. When I would send my monthly newsletter to my past and potential clients, I would always get this one lovely client from the beginning of my career. It was an older woman named Harriet, and she's still one of my favorite clients. And she would always write me the littlest note and be like, Rebecca, it's so lovely to hear you're doing so well. I tell all my friends about you. And I thought, that's amazing. Like, that's the idea. You want to stay top of mind, because if they can bring you projects when you're super busy and you're not paying attention to the marketing, you're not putting yourself out there, you're not networking, but at least you're staying top of mind for your past clients, they're going to be a repeat referral source. And before you know it, they will have another project for you. Because the idea is we want to bring in more consistent cash flow. We don't want to just throw up our arms and say, well, that's the industry for you. There's peaks and valleys. And yes, I want you to do your research and figure out in your business, because every business is slightly different. When does it typically pick up? When does it typically slow down? I know for me, I tend to get a lot of leads in the fall, projects starting late fall, let's say January, and it is crickets in the summer. So this way, I'm not sweating it in the summer in my design business if I'm not getting a lead, because I know that that's typical in the industry. That's my 6th tip. Tip number 6 is that exactly. Understand what the peaks and valleys are in your industry, in your city, where you live, right? Be aware of seasonality. If you live in a city or a town that has 4 serious seasons with deep winter and hot summers, that seasonality or those peaks and valleys are going to look really different to you than they are to somebody who's in Southwest Florida, right? So understand what the peaks and valleys are so that you can A, accept that that's normal, and B, find creative ways to fill your pipeline leading into those slow times, whether through repeat clients, whether diversifying and adding a different service. Maybe at Christmas time, you offer Christmas decorating services so that you can maintain the cash flow. And then lastly, step number 7, seek professional guidance with your finances. I really can't stress this one enough. There's only so much we can do on our own. When you hire a professional that just gets it and knows more than you when it comes to finances, they can only help you be better. They can only help you understand things more. And it might take time. I've had 2 accountants in the years of having my business. Both accountants, I felt like they were speaking and it went right over my head. I still ask my accountant to this day to say, hey, Lisa, can you just break that down into like layman's terms? I'm sorry, can you go back again? I don't fully understand because let's face it, it's not my area of expertise. But when you can seek professional guidance, whether it is a monthly person to come in and do your books, a bookkeeper, an accountant to help you at tax time, maybe it's even a financial accountant to help you plan and forecast your cash flow. Maybe it's administrator, like an office manager, someone who can step in and can do invoicing for you and help manage the books and help you manage your expenses. Seek professional guidance with your finances. Do not try to do this alone. If you don't have any experience and you keep turning a blind eye the way I used to do, invest the money. The only way you're going to get clarity and start to get on top of the numbers is when you have someone there to guide you. So that's my 7 tips. Sorry. Let me just recap those. So number 1, know how much money you need to live. Number 2, separate your personal and business bank accounts. Number 3, build an emergency fund. Number 4, auto transfer money to yourself monthly. Number 5, nurture past clients for referral business. Number 6, get familiar with the peaks and valleys in your town or city when it comes to your business and your industry. And then last, number 7, seek professional guidance with your finances. So those are 7 things that I have done in my past 9 years of running my business that have made a big difference. But what I will tell you has been the best thing of all of these tips, and I promised I was going to share this at the end. Oh, hold on. Before I share that, I just also want to direct you to a really good episode that I recorded with my operations manager, Merilee Wright. It's episode 113 of this podcast. It's called Know Your Numbers Part 3, How to Forecast for Your Business. I think if you've enjoyed this episode, you're really going to like episode 113, Know Your Numbers. There's a 3-part series where we dive into all things financial, and that specific one is about forecasting, how to plan and forecast and anticipate cash flow. So I think you guys are going to love that episode. I have a couple other ones. I don't want to mention them all because it would be too overwhelming, but there's one other that I think is worth diving into, and that is number 54, setting up your design business for financial success with Etel Igreda. Etel is an accountant here in Toronto who works exclusively with interior designers. So that's a really great episode. That's episode 54. Okay, so of these 7 tips, the one that in my opinion has been the biggest game changer, these can all be really impactful. Like, I'm not going to lie, I'm not trying to say one's better than the other, but if you could only do one, it would be auto transfer funds to yourself every month or put yourself on payroll, which really is what made a big difference for me. Is I put myself on payroll because now it just happens and I feel less stress. So when I'm looking at the bank account and I'm looking at the cash flow, I always am like, okay, my payroll cost of me paying myself just fits into the expenses of my entire team. It used to be that I would look at all my expenses and then I would look at all my team, like I'd look at my payroll expenses or my independent contractors or freelancers. And then at the end, I'd look at the profitability of the business, but I wasn't factoring in paying myself. So be like, oh, that's so great. This year we're projected to make $50,000 profit. Oh, wait, I didn't account for paying myself and I'd like to pay myself more than that. Shit. So now my salary, my base salary is included in the total expenses. So paying myself every single month the same amount, and sometimes I can pay myself more if there's room for it, has really helped me feel more safe and secure in running my business. Okay, there you have it. 7 tips to hopefully help you get on top of that fear. And hopefully for those of you who've been nervous to dive in, these are some you've taken away at least a handful of tips that you could use if you want to build your business today. If you're ready and done with your previous career and you want to dive into business ownership and running a design business, this will help you. Let me know if you enjoyed this episode. As always, please feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It means so much to me when I see those 5 stars and those lovely words so that we can get our podcast out to more people. And until I see you next, have a great day, and I'll see you soon. The Resilient by Design podcast is produced by Vera Marquez, edited by Abby Circatella, and hosted by yours truly, Rebecca Hay.